Hello, Adrianne.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing well.
So great to have you on this call. We're all so excited, very big fans.
I'm excited too.
Where are you calling from today?
I'm in Vermont, um, on on my sister's land, in a trailer.
Wow, well, that's photographic. That's quite an image right there.
I would show you if there wasn't a risk of losing my internet connection. It's a very delicate balance out here.
Well, I could tell the trailer itself is it's a really beautiful interior. So feels appropriate. So I'm going to ask a series of questions, as you know, and answer them as you wish.
Cool.
Um, you ready to begin?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your earliest memory from childhood?
Um, my earliest memory, it's not very romantic. It's uh I I remember looking over and seeing this little boy, probably my age at the time. I think I was maybe 2, licking a plate that had contained, I think it had macaroni and cheese on it, and he had put ketchup all over it, and I just remember there was still this like smeared ketchup on the plate, and he was licking the whole thing like really intensely. And I remember feeling like very uncomfortable, just like kind of
That's
staring.
that's quite an image. I like that.
That's when the memory kicked in. It was like, well, time to
How
take.
old, how old do you think you were?
I think I must have been 2 because I was still in Indiana, which is where I was born, and I moved from there when I was like 3.5 or 4. I mean, that's my guess. That's just the very first thing. I think it's my only memory from Indiana.
What was your first aesthetic awakening?
This is interesting. Yeah, I wonder what this is or what this means. Um,
Me too.
because, well, I guess in the realm of art and music, um, well, I don't know. Like for some reason, my mind goes right to when I was maybe 7 or 8, and I watched. I think I saw something like Where the Red Fern Grows,
Mm.
and I remember wanting to be like that kid, and like I remember like wanting to like wear jeans and have like, I don't know, just like have like a stick of jerky and
Mm.
like a hatchet and like mud on my hands, and like I just felt like that's what I want to go for. I want to be in the woods with some dogs, with my leaning up against a tree. But I don't know if, like, it's all so blurred together. Um and then I think like musically, I guess there was a time where my dad was kind of managing me, and I was making these heavily produced things when I was maybe 14.
Wow.
And at one point, I just realized I heard an Elliott Smith song, or I heard an
Uh,
Elliott Smith record, and I was like, wow, like that's the I don't want to cover everything up with all of these with all of these effects and all of this gloss. Like I just want it to be more naked and raw, and yeah. But I don't know. I wonder, that's an interesting question.
yeah, it can be answered so many different ways, and I think you totally gave us two like really vital and alive answers to that. So, but along the lines of the Elliott Smith, are there other mm, musicians that influenced you when you were coming of age? Were there like other bands or songwriters that changed you in one way or another?
Yeah, I everything I think everything that I encountered and everything that I observed witnessed me influenced me so much. And um I mean, starting with my dad playing guitar around the house and singing and kind of writing and getting lost in these trances late at night.
Mhm.
um I kind of learned how to make songs by watching him. um
Wow.
Kind of felt like I'd watch him disappear and then be replaced by all of the sounds he was making. And but then also just teachers that I had, um and there were other artists too, like Michael Hedges, who was kind of that like tap style guitar.
Hmm.
um he was one of the original people doing that. And um but there were a lot, like Elliott Smith, like but I didn't really draw influence from, like, I didn't really get obsessed with like one artist and just want to learn and like try to learn their body of work. And like it was always just this like smattering of fragments of all of the things that I was picking up. And I feel like I was just as influenced by like my next door neighbor musically, even though they weren't making music, just from like watching their facial expressions
Right.
and needing to somehow translate that, like needing to somehow express or take that in and then let it come out into some form that I could experience by playing it. Like, yeah.
You studied music in school, right? Is that correct?
hmm
What was that experience like?
Um, the studying of the music part I found to be challenging in that a lot of it was pretty lifeless.
Mm.
Like I felt like um as, as soon as it was put into a curriculum, it felt like a lot of the soul was just kind of zapped out of the music.
Academic in a way?
Yeah, and just like talking about music, like putting it into all these formulas and the idea that you could learn how to write a good song.
Hmm.
It kind of like baffled me that anyone could even teach anybody else how to write a good song. Like, because I feel like there's infinite pathways to getting to a place that feels genuine, but no one can give you the pathway to your own like original feeling and like your deepest self. And so like all of it kind of felt like it was just like dancing around the edges of what, like there wasn't anything, there was a yeah, I just felt like it was lacking aliveness. Well, I mean, really, because there were textbooks and we're talking about music, and it was actually kind of rare that somebody would. I did find a couple of teachers who I really connected with, but that took time. And those teachers I found would sort of throw the book into the air and like take their instrument out and just like start playing something and start and like if there was if there was a concept that they were trying to get across, it was already being like brought through in this very musical way. And I always like I've always found it hard to talk about music.
Sure, of course. How do you write a song?
I'll tell you exactly how to write a good
Yeah,
song.
tell me how to do it.
All right, it's pretty simple. No. um how do I write a song? I guess
Yeah.
um I don't know.
Is there like is it the instrument first, a phrase, lyric, or is
Hmm. Yeah. Well, actually, it is often starting with the relationship that I have with my guitar.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it has to be like a physical vibration. Like that's why
Mm.
I love acoustic guitar because I can hold it against my body and I can feel it resonating. And then kind of just like lining myself up or like matching finding the frequency that like tuning myself to the guitar and then um kind of just finding a sonic space that brings that um pulls images to the surface. And then um really it's like kind of gibberish. Like I just it all I'm just like it's way less about sitting down trying to make a piece of work and actually just being in a space where I can feel. And that's actually really hard
I'm
sometimes.
sure.
I mean for I imagine for most, not just for myself, but in this world that we're living in and in the day-to-day life to get to a space where you feel safe enough or comfortable enough or relaxed enough to really explore like what is going on inside and then to just let it be there and then but really it's I don't know, I guess I've never really had an interest in like a goal of making a big body of work or of making stuff that's really profound or like selling it or like it's always felt like I need this to feel okay to have it's like my closest it's like the way that I can it's like my tether
Hmm.
to you know things make more sense to me when I'm in that space like in that world of of creating but it's so mysterious.
What is the difference for you between the recording process and playing live to an audience? Do you have a preference too between those two things?
Well, they are so different because I think of recording as a much more um insular, like introverted process. It's private and you can you can play through things as much as you need and sort of shape things at your own pace and have time to kind of edit or like revise things and go, is this the clearest translation? Is my intention actually being clearly communicated? And but it's also difficult in that same sense. It's more difficult to conjure up the magic because I feel like having an audience, it kind of asks that of you that you be your most present. And it's a lot easier, or maybe I think it's a lot easier to hide from myself than to hide from a room of people.
Mm.
Like I feel really naked when I'm performing or playing.
Hmm.
I actually don't even think of it as performing because it's just playing and I've actually had a hard time with performing in that I haven't I don't really know how to create a barrier between
Hmm.
myself and the audience that like I'm not feeling every little thing and kind of taking on like sort of this protective. I think performance can be a protective thing because you're playing a part or like you can inhabit a character or like repeat something that becomes refined and you just become and I've always felt like uh I often feel at a loss for words and I often feel like I'm shaking on stage and I often feel just kind of like, whoa, okay, there's no hiding now. Like I just gotta the only thing that seems to feel good is to just be honest with where I'm at in the moment. But I guess the difference is the vulnerability. Like
Right.
performing feels very vulnerable, and it's a practice of immediate, like it's challenging to have like self-forgiveness, like self-love in the moment, and be like, you know, it's I find it a lot harder to refrain from self-criticism during the process of performing.
Mm. What's your least favorite part of the artistic process? You know, from you could take that from any aspect, you know, um, of being a musician and uh, what's your like the part that just you enjoy the least,
Hmm.
or
um I think the lulls, the periods that feel it's like almost this excruciating severing from the flow, like something was just like it's inevitable to have like times where everything's just falling into place, and you feel like, like you can like align with like you can do the craft that you've been practicing, and like and things are just happening and coming, and like the energy is there, and things become clear and vivid, and it feels like it's like a very fulfilling and satisfying feeling to be in the process of making work. But then when there's long period, there'll be these periods where it's just like, am I ever going to write anything again? Or like, am I ever going to feel that feeling again? Or like, is it lost? Or and I think those, like the emptiness of that, and of trying to like validate myself in those periods of time, that I'm not just like a worth, like a, not like that my art means something, but that my life means something,
right,
and that my life means something even without my art. Like, in that even if I didn't write another song again, that I'm inherently made of all of the things that my songs are even made of. So it'll always take different shapes. And I think not clutching so hard to the medium, that I am like not, I guess, overly identifying with being a songwriter, being in a band called Big Thief, being a songwriter called Adrianne Lenker, and like this is what I do, and this is what people kind of expect, and this is what I expect of myself. And but yeah, really, I think that can be the most challenging part, is really just like believing in myself, that even without all of this, that, going back to that like 7-year old, and just
hmm,
like, whether it comes out in the form of cooking, or it comes out in the form of taking a walk with a friend, or it comes out in the form of, you know writing in a journal that no one will ever see, or it comes out in the form of like a masterpiece that I think is just like this amazing work of art that I'm going to share with people, and I'm so proud of it, like, you know that like actually none of those things are worth more than the other. And
right,
when we leave this plane, we don't really get to take our albums with us, like, it's like, or anything that we create, it's all just like happening in a moment, and then it all kind of eventually like fades into oblivion. But it's cool to be a part of that dance. I'm kind of sorry, I'm just getting.
fantastic. Do you feel your work is autobiographical in any sense?
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
tell us how.
Well, even if something is somewhat fictional, I still feel like it can be autobiographical.
Yeah.
And I mean, some stuff is just like an account of something that happened, you know, even down to the names and the details. And then there are some things where I feel that that a fantastical version of it describes the reality that I experienced more than like a literal or realist version of it. Like sometimes I feel that I have to like dig into some unseeable thing that was actually imperceptible to anyone else during an occurrence, and then bring that into a tangible form in order to further understand the true happening.
Hmm.
Like how, because, and like happenings are different from every angle, but sometimes things feel so beyond description that like I feel like I'm just kind of sinking my teeth into the very edges of being able to kind of like sort of get a little bit of the meat of what, and I feel that way in a lot of the songs actually, like it's actually just one big song that I'm working on throughout the
Right.
course of my life that just becomes, and it's never like, I got it, I learned exactly how to describe this feeling, like it's, or like this thing that happened with my mother, or like this thing that I saw on the street, and like it's never like, this is perfect, like I know this completely. It's almost like the thing itself. It's like it's always that point of like, I guess this is enough, like this is enough to like I feel a little bit closer to it, never quite arriving, but like a little bit closer.
Is there a song that makes you cry, or a movie, some form of art?
um yeah. I, but I have to think for a second.
Yeah.
Hmm. A lot of things make me cry.
Yeah. 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 I understand.
I'll cry during a commercial or something.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say I could cry. Like commercials make me cry. Anything makes me cry,
Constant.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, how has success affected your work?
What what do you mean by success?
And well, however you want to interpret that, like,
Hmm.
or what do you feel success is?
Hmm. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
That's something that makes me cry because I'm so tired of what success seems to be thought of as,
Yeah.
and
Right.
the weight that comes bearing down on people who think that they're not measuring up to some particular form of success, like a standardized test,
Mm,
like like this is what success is, and if your life doesn't look like this, then you're not successful, or like this is what being smart, this is what intelligence looks like, and so we've made this test to measure one type of intelligence, and then bringing it to all these individuals, where it's like I feel like uh I guess that's what that brings up more than anything, is like, what is success and what does that mean? And I think that it can be, people can achieve so much, and there's no measurement system for what they're achieving. And like, I guess I will acknowledge that I feel incredibly fortunate, and to have gotten to this place with music where I'm able to sustain feeding myself and putting out more, making more music. And and I guess like that being a goal that I have had, then I've succeeded at that. But um I'm no happier like now than I was when I was playing house shows for 50 people. Um
Right.
eh, or 5 people. Um and I also just feel that there are so many people I love and whose music or whose art I truly deeply admire, who have been kind of like slogging it out for years and years and years. And I think that they're brilliant. Like, I just think that they're like changing the world, but like, or their music is like legendary, but it just like, it doesn't seem to catch on
Right.
any of the cogs of the machine that like, and so they're just like, still needing to work, you know, other jobs and I think that but some of those people are some of the most successful that like one thing is like I guess in a form of success that I hope to have in my own life is to be inspired until I die. Like whenever that may be, but like in old age it would be wonderful to be creating and be ripping things apart and putting them back together and just like looking deeply into things and having curiosity intact. Like I feel like you've walked if you've lived in this on this earth and your curiosity is intact, like that's a really amazing success, you know, wherever you like.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, that's
What
like
have
a
you
big
been?
can of worms.
That's a great. These answers are fantastic. So heartfelt and real. What have you been listening to or reading or watching over this past year?
um wow, a lot, I guess. But most well, there's this record by Robbie Basho,
Hmm.
um, and it's called Visions of the Country. And from what I know, you can find it on YouTube, but I don't know if it's on any of the other streaming platforms. But I've listened to that heavily this last year. It's one of my favorite records right now. Um, I'm always listening to a lot of Twain. My friend Matt Davidson is one of my favorite songwriters. Um,
Hmm.
um, I just got a book in the mail from my friend Becky. Um, Zadie Smith's Intimations. That's been a really
Wow.
awesome read. Um, and Ursula Le Guin this year. It's been kind of like a big Ursula Le Guin time. Um, but yeah, a lot of other stuff too.
So we're almost out of time, but are you open to answering one or two questions from some of the photo students?
Definitely.
Yeah, great. Lindsay, how about, I know Jess has a question.
Hello. I just haven't really figured out my question, Greg.
Oh,
Um,
just
I don't know.
no.
Okay. I mean, I kind of just had been thinking about what you said about, I guess, fiction, in the songwriting and how you can kind of approach. I don't know. I was thinking of it sort of as an emotional truth that um, is more. Uh, I don't know, more it gets to the heart of the thing than like any I don't know, reality could. And I just would be interested in maybe hearing a little bit more about that.
Mm, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's an exploration for me too. I'm interested in learning more about it. as well. Like, but yeah, I guess, yeah, sometimes I think that just saying something like, it's almost like this angle of like when you look at something exactly head on, it's like maybe like you slightly move and you're, and it's not exactly like fabricating anything. It's just kind of like shifting the lens to looking at a different part of the room when like there's this whole other thing going on. Like, to me anyway, I guess, like, I guess my version of the fiction is it's not, it's rarely like so abstract that it couldn't have been there.
Hmm.
um but maybe nothing is so, maybe, well, if there's multiple dimensions and many different planes that we can't see, then perhaps everything could be kind of like here all the time. And but yeah, it's just like, I just imagine it as like there's something going on, and then like, but there's also all this dust being kicked up on the floor, and then suddenly you're like zooming into that, and then within that is this microcosm of like this little insect that's like had its leg broken, and like you're looking at suddenly the drama of this, and like somehow this thing that happened just as this kind of like accidental, like, uh as a, like, it's a side, I'm missing the word that I'm actually trying to find, um but this somehow could more deeply describe what's going on, like within, like the way that this was just sort of brushed and like lost in this chaos of what was like a dust storm in the desert for this tiny little insect, like might be a more effective way to actually communicate to myself the emotion that perhaps like the main character in is actually, like, what is actually going on here. It's like this like avoidance or like distraction from, like, I guess it's just like shifting, and then maybe like you turn onto the ceiling or like the wall, or like, or maybe there's a landscape behind, and like just zooming into like different parts of what's happening, or um where it's not exactly like, it's still there, and it's just, yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of just like grasping right now for
Good.
how can I understand it more too, I don't know.
I think Ian has a question. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. So I'm trying to formulate this. Hopefully it makes sense. But whenever, or like my experience with your music, both as Big Thief and on your solo stuff, has been so visual. And so I'm curious about the role or like the importance of visual imagery to your practice. Also, quick side note, the part in Not where your voice starts to break away is like one of like two things that has got me through this year. So thank you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, thanks. um so visuals within the songs, what was the specific, or was there, can you repeat your question or rephrase?
Yeah, sorry. I guess just like what is the importance or what role does like visual imagery kind of play in your practice, or like influences your practice as a songwriter and musician?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a lot. I mean, a big part of it. Yes, I am. These are all, honestly, these are questions that, as like, I could really spend a long time contemplating this. So I'm trying to like quickly grab all of my thoughts and like, um I mean, I think just because I think everything um that I'm experiencing through my senses goes into the music full on, like what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and smelling and tasting, and um I don't know if I'm a particularly visual thinker or person. I guess I am. I think I see a lot of like montage, like lots of like fragments of things. That's how I remember things too. And it's like and yeah, and light, and also I think I am very affected by imagery, and it feels like such a broad um like topic, I guess. Do you have any specific like thoughts about this?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts, more than I think we probably have time for, or that anybody else cares to hear about. But maybe
And it's visuals and music, I guess. Like, is there music, and are there what kind? How does music? Can you hear music when you see imagery?
for me, like I think the most successful or like impactful imagery for me kind of elicits like that vibration that you were talking about, like with the guitar, or like with the thing of like putting yourself there with it physically.
Yeah.
And I think like in terms of like your music with imagery, I think Jess and I were actually talking about this earlier, but the imagery, it feels both of like a very specific place, like it is somewhere that is known, but it's not completely known, like it's familiar but alien. And so like, yeah, I guess, and also maybe a more solidified question is just like your relationship to visual art outside of like auditory things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be so powerful, and I've been really influenced by. I have some really close friends who are visual artists, and I've always been really influenced by them and their work, and but I think it's interesting that it is kind of all the same stuff, like the vibration and the frequency, and like a light wave and a sound wave, and like um it's all the same stuff. Like imagery can evoke sound, and that type of frequency, and like sound can evoke imagery, and I think it kind of is like very similar, music and images. And it's just, I wish I knew more of this actual science behind things. Are there physics people in here? But I feel like it is it pretty much the same? Like, is light just like a faster wave? Like, and is it really just the same stuff? Like like, is light just like the faster frequency, and like how we're perceiving an image? Where, like, if you sped up a sound wave to the speed of light, would it then, like, could you speed up a song to the speed of light, and then would each song project a different image? Is anyone in here?
Oh, this is getting very intense. I don't know if anyone, well, while we're considering that, and I know we have to wrap up.
I don't have a more like concise answer. It's just because, like,
that was
so
so beautiful of like you posing that question of the frequencies if you speed up, like that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Before we go, we need to ask you, what are you working on?
This cup of coffee, slowly but surely. Oh yeah, I'm working on some music with my band, and yeah, we're kind of heavily into it right now. We're like in the thick of working on some stuff. But yeah, but really above all else though, I'm kind of just working on existing.
It's a good answer. I want to shout out Genesis, of course, before we close. Alumni from the school, and I know a very close friend of yours.
Yeah.
Great photographer, and
Hi.
ending. Oh, there she is.
I love you.
Yay. Word of advice as we end.
I thought you were gonna give me one for the first second that you said that, and I was excited.
Oh, me to give you word of advice? Not after that speed of light soliloquy. How could I, like, add anything to that?
Oh man, I don't have any words of advice. Yeah, just like not to be soppy, but like unconditional self acceptance, like while making anything or being in any kind of process. I guess that's the thing. I guess that's the advice I've been trying to take for myself is like kind of keep like continuing the moment, like pushing out of the system and like all of the constructs that we've been brought up to like believe in, and like all the structures in place for education and what that's supposed to look like, and for becoming good at something, and like achievement and success, and like that can just be like so much pressure, and I think it can just like suck all the fun out of the whole process. And I guess it's just to like to enjoy, to do whatever it takes to be in a space where you can enjoy yourself, like enjoy the thing that you're doing, and like regardless of like what anyone ever thinks of it, or just but to actually just be like, whoa, this thing feels so cool to look at and to like hold, and like it's like really, it's, I guess it's pretty simple, but it feels like quite the thing to actually learn, because at every turn it feels like there's an opportunity for comparison, and for kind of like just kind of self-defeating thoughts, like specifically in creativity, where just like nothing's worth sacrificing your enjoyment of what you're actually, or at least your own fulfillment, like your own relationship with what you're creating. It's like so much more important than, I think. Yeah. All right.
It's a great answer. Thank you so much for this, spending time with us, and I know the students and all of us are really thankful. Yes.
Thank you so
And we
much.
can't wait to hear the new music. Well, with great anticipation.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me on, and hi to everyone that is here, and thank you for coming.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.